Interesting topic, accelerating growth. Anand, welcome to the Pile and Chani Leadership Podcast. It's such an honor to have someone like you on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Anand. And I know you have had so many achievements. You have years and decades of experience. Were you always interested in the FMCG market? Is that where your career started from?
Well, no. So, just very briefly, I've grown up in a kind of very middle-class home. And I was an average student for most of my school time, till I realized that one needed to work hard if you wanted to do well, right? And then the kind of penny dropped and things changed. Thereafter, I actually went to engineering, right? I did electronics.
Oh, wow.
Thinking at that time in the 70s, mid-70s when I joined, that it was the budding field. It was the most sought after part of engineering. But within the first semester or two, it became very clear that that is not what I wanted to do. So I finished my engineering because once you got in, you got to get out. And then I went on to do an MBA. And it's in my summer internship in MBA that I discovered the wonderful world of brands. So this was in the summer of 1982. And since then, I have dedicated most of my life, and I'm actually quite passionate about brands and companies that own brands and how you drive brands for growth.
And you enjoy this, like you enjoy this more than the engineering part of it?
Well, the engineering is part of your DNA if you spend 5 years doing that. So, a lot of people think marketing of brands is about creativity and advertising and nice models. But actually, it is more a science than an art. It's about numbers. It's about rigorous consumer analytics. It's about consumer testing, right? It's about R&D work to create products that satisfy unmet needs of consumers. So actually, there's a lot of science in marketing. And I think I kind of revel when there are numbers and there's a spreadsheet because that's my DNA, right? And then I try and then partner with the more creative people, right? Far more creative than I am to make 1 + 1 = 3.
So this sounds so interesting, Anand. Tell me, you said it's not just creativity, it's about knowing the consumers, it's about knowing what. Have you seen the change in the consumer market comparatively to where it is going now in a digital age? And what change are you seeing?
Well, I think, the one thing is that you are always behind the change, right? The change is just so rapid. The other thing I'll tell you, and that's nothing to do with what's happening today. Generally speaking, marketeers are more conservative than consumers. Consumers want the next new thing.
Right.
Okay. Marketeers say, hey, but my brand, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. Otherwise, I might spoil my brand, I might damage my brand. So generally, consumers are more ready for change than managers and marketeers are. And I think the big difference that's happened is earlier, consumers were happy being talked to by brands because communication, media was one way. Suddenly it's become two ways. And you know what? If they don't like something you say or promise, they will tell you and the world about it. So I think this fundamental shift about marketing and brands becoming a two-way conversation, right, is a fundamental shift. And of course, it's enabled by technology and everything else that goes with it. Yeah, but I think that's one fundamental shift that's happened.
Okay. And when we talk about growth, what is growth opportunity for any company? How do you define that?
Well, I think every company can define it the way they want, but so I'll try and explain my philosophy on this through maybe a little story. First, because I really believe that growth is actually more in the mind than the opportunities being there or not being there out in the marketplace.
Okay? And how is that? How do we do that?
So I'll give you this example. So I joined Cadbury in 2005. You might have been too little then, but there was this big worm infestation crisis in Cadbury chocolate in 2003, 2004,
Yeah, yeah,
where,
yeah.
yeah, and that's the sad thing about bad events. Everyone remembers, no one forgets. So there was
Correct.
this whole crisis where there were articles in the newspaper and photographs every day that there was these creepy crawlies coming out of Cadbury
Yeah, yeah,
chocolate.
yeah.
And this is a product you put into your child's mouth.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you can imagine what happened to the sales of Cadbury and to the trust in the brand.
Mhm.
So the team actually had started coming out of the problem in 2005, and the big business started picking up again. And they did some great things, okay, to resurrect it back. And what it tells you is that when brands have deep relationships with you, they're also willing to forgive. If you're honest, you accept, and you show the intent to change. Okay. So I joined in 2005, and the business historically had been growing at 10%. So I joined the company, and I was just coming back from a brief overseas assignment.
Mm.
And I felt in 2005 there was a party happening out there in the Indian economy, but Cadbury wasn't participating in that party.
Mm.
And the mindset of people was that we have always grown about 9% CAGR, right, over decades. Double-digit growth is damn good.
Mm.
They believed that
Absolutely.
the Cadbury brand, which had been around for 60 years in India, everyone had grown up on it, probably even some of
Yeah,
our grandparents.
yeah.
It was a mature brand, a mature category. How can it grow any faster? So I came in with this newfound ambition to grow this business faster. Okay. And without too much thinking, I laid out an ambition of saying we're going to grow this business at 20% till 2010. For 5 years in a row, we'll grow it at 20%, which is double the rate of its historical growth rate.
Wow.
Now, most guys around in the company thought this guy doesn't understand the category, he has no clue about this business, he's talking in the air. But for me, it was like this. When somebody mentioned the Cadbury brand to me, it felt like this big brand in my mind. But when I looked at the revenue, I would say, that's it. Is that how small this brand is? Now, that in some ways reflected just the potential and the opportunity for me about the size of the brand in the mind versus the size on the ground. So, obviously, you have an ambition, you've got to put a strategy and an action plan there. It's a bit like John F. Kennedy, when he said that at the turn of the decade, we will send a man to the moon and bring him safely back. When John F. Kennedy articulated that dream, he didn't know how the hell they were going to make it happen. But once he laid out that goal, I mean, the whole world and NASA and everyone else started working on it. So it was a bit like that in a much smaller way, right? When I said this, and then we built a plan. And the business grew at 25% CAGR for 8 years in a row.
Wow.
Okay. Cadbury Dairy Milk brand grew at 30% CAGR, right? Because we said that the market is not chocolates, the market is Indian sweets.
Mm.
And we are only a minuscule part of the larger Indian sweet market.
Yeah.
All right. And we started positioning ourselves against sweets. So
Yeah,
actually, growth,
yes.
coming
The
back to your
Diwali and
question,
the packaging during Diwali
the
and everything
Diwali and,
changed.
is
Yes.
Diwali aap kise khush karenge,
Yes,
kuch
yes.
meetha ho jaye,
I
and
remember.
saying after a celebration, if you get good grades in your exams, you give sweets to everybody, instead give chocolates to everybody. So we were just substituting chocolate for sweets, and that's what happened to growth. So when you say growth for any company, which was your question, I'm just saying a lot of growth is available. It's the constraint is not out there, and like many people, we worry about things not in our control.
Mm.
If you just focus on what's in your control, you can find growth anywhere.
I absolutely agree. You just have to focus on what's in your control. And like you said, it's in the mind. So when we talk about the mind, how can one conquer the minds of the customer?
So I don't believe in the concept of conquering the mind of the customer.
Mm.
I think you have to get into the mind of the customer.
And how do you
You
do
have
that?
to get under the skin of the customer. Because our job is to understand what makes customers and consumers tick, what needs do they have, what are their unmet needs, and if all their needs are satisfied, then how can I raise it from satisfaction to delight,
Wow.
satisfy their existing needs even better.
Uh,
Right. So, functionally speaking, you can buy a handbag for 200 rupees and it works well, but Louis Vuitton delights you. So you're willing to pay
yeah.
100 or 1,000 times that price because it still carries your things. It doesn't do anything more functionally, but it just delights you in a way in which it makes you feel so good when you're carrying that bag. So
Yeah.
it goes beyond just functionality. Okay. And that is about truly being obsessed with understanding the consumer, understanding what's in their mind, what they really want, what they're willing to pay for, right? And making that happen. So I think that is the important thing. I don't think the intent in marketing is ever to conquer the
I like that.
consumer or the customer's
What
mind.
you said, that it's about delighting them. It's like getting into their mind. And I'm sure you being in this industry and you're a veteran here, so you know what does it take to get into that mind. I mean, are there any such processes or any such surveys? How can people and companies know what delights the customer?
So all of the things you said, okay. One is there is no substitute for going and personally spending time. So I must tell you that in 2004, I was transferred as managing director for Unilever in East Africa, based in Nairobi.
Mm.
And I was this alien Indian arriving on the shores of East Africa. And I obviously did not know the culture. Right? I did not know what drives consumers. And I had to head the company, which was not doing well. And I was sent there to help turn around the company. And I can tell you, I went into some of the most dangerous slum areas in Nairobi, where the company said you cannot go. But I went there and I started sitting with consumers and understanding how they live their life, what trade offs they make, and how they manage with $2 a day. Right? Now, there is no substitute for that personal feel.
Mm.
Yes, you can also sit in the boardroom, in an air conditioned boardroom, where a smart market researcher will give you an analytical view of what they are picking up. Right? But it's about you building empathy and sensitivity for consumers. And I think you have to use multiple tools and techniques to get close. And the interesting thing is, despite decades and generations of people trying to understand consumers, nobody has understood 100%. And the
Right.
consumer keeps evolving. So there's always something new to go and learn. Right. But how else will you keep one step ahead of what consumers want? Right. If you don't have a finger on that pulse.
Mm. True. And you also mentioned something, Anand, earlier, that nowadays change is so fast that we are all behind that change. And so that means the consumers' minds are changing consistently and quickly.
No, absolutely. And that's why. So, one of the things is marketeers, business leaders who can probably see a bit of the future before other people are the ones who will get their businesses to get to the future first.
Mm.
Okay. And that's why you need, people who are visionary and so on and so forth. But that apart, coming more, I think, to the ground, I think the reality is this, that consumers are open to disruption. So if you see people who have taken bold risks, have disrupted the traditional companies who have always done things the same way for decades,
Mm.
because the consumers are ready for it. I mean, who thought consumers would be as tech savvy and as tech ready as they are today
Yeah.
10 years ago? 10 years ago. And it is a generational change
Mm.
that's happened. And people don't know how to read and write,
Yeah.
but they know how
True.
to use their phone. They'll put in an OTP. They will and watch
That is
a cricket
absolutely
game,
true. Yes.
on their screen.
Yeah.
It's a leapfrogging of technology. It's not an evolution of technology. It's a leapfrogging. Okay. So, I think people have to be bolder than they've been in the past and will be willing to take risk. Now, the problem of taking risk is very often you've got a stable business that's throwing up cash and earning profit. You don't want to disrupt your business. But you know what? You then leave the gates open for someone else to come in and disrupt your business if you don't disrupt it yourself. And there are just so many examples of this. And the classic one is Kodak. I mean, what happened to Kodak?
Yeah.
Right? They never evolved into
Digital, yeah.
Photography.
Right.
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 There are
Many like this who are out of the market completely. I mean, they are nowhere to be heard of now.
There are many brands, and the important thing on brands is this: products have a finite life cycle. Brands don't need to have. Brands can ride different product life cycles. So you could move from a manual typewriter to an electric typewriter to a PC, right? To whatever else you want. But the brand could have stayed alive. But the Remington brand, I don't think is there today when you're writing letters that you used to use as a typewriter in the past or whatever. And that's the important thing. Brands, one of the lines that I remember is to say, there are no mature brands. There are only mature brand managers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's about how you think as a manager. Because you have to innovate and keep pace. If consumers want shower gels and you're still making a cake of soap, then the product life cycle for cakes of soap is dying. But for shower gels is exploding.
So we had a similar case with Blockbuster, right? Like I remember times when I used to be a big fan of Blockbuster and how Blockbuster was completely wiped out by Netflix.
And again, that's what technology does to you. And Blockbuster said we rent out whatever VHS and so on and so forth. And that technology is dead today. Who uses a CD?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Who listens to music on a CD?
Yeah.
It's finished. But the brand doesn't need to go. Right? And so that's the way. And brands, that's the way brands outlive products.
So how can one build this brand resilience? So that, like you said, brands don't die. There are so many brands who have gone. How do you build this resilience? How can brand evolve?
So I think, so a couple of things. First, a brand is a promise, right? The relationship of a brand with a consumer is trust. Every time you fail to deliver the brand promise, every time you say that this shampoo will make your hair really silky and shiny, and it doesn't, that's a breach of trust, right? You've lost faith in that brand. So one is brands have to stay true to delivering their brand promise consistently. Okay. The second thing about building brands is just consistency, not playing the fool, right? Staying the course, because brands are built over years and decades, and sometimes even generations, like Coca-Cola, right? Yeah. So that's what you do. The third is innovate in a relevant way, and that comes back to product life cycle. If people want digital photography, they want photography. That's the fundamental need. What the technology is inside the black box of the camera, the consumer doesn't care. But they want a photograph of their family. All right? That's all they want. Now, you have to adapt to new products and technologies. And therefore, you have to have your finger on the pulse on what's happening out there, both in terms of technology and in terms of consumers' wants and needs. Right? And that's how you put all this together. And you have brands then that your parents grew up with, that you're growing up with, and your children will grow up with.
Yeah.
Okay. They have stood the test of time.
I think one that comes to my mind in India, now I'm just talking about it, is Parle G. It has the same picture, everything remains the same.
Parle G, Colgate, and these are brands that have been here forever. Lifebuoy soap, Lux soap. Yeah. They've been here forever. And that's because you have, and despite having new generations of marketers handling those brands, I think they've tried to stay true to the basic brand promise.
Absolutely. remember the cookies in the United States called Chipoys, and they have been just going on for years with the same branding, same taste. So yeah, like you said, that's what it takes to build the
Which one?
resilience.
Chips Ahoy.
Yeah,
Cookies,
yeah,
absolutely.
Chips
Yeah,
Ahoy is
Chips
like
Ahoy,
really good. Yeah.
Oreo biscuits. I mean, these have been going on forever. Yeah.
Very true, very right. That is true. Anand, going away from our discussion on accelerating growth, I read about you being an ardent fan of cricket, or do you also play cricket?
I have played cricket in my youth.
Okay.
I don't play cricket now, but when I was the managing director for Diageo in India, Diageo owned a cricket team, one of the IPL cricket teams called Royal Challengers Bangalore. So Royal Challengers
Yeah.
Bangalore was 100% subsidiary of the company. So for 8 years, I was closely involved with that team. And, RCB is one of the teams which is probably the most famous, the biggest fan base, but has disappointed fans for years by not winning the trophy ever. Okay. But I'll tell you, for me, in my management career, managing a cricket team in IPL was the icing on the cake,
Wow.
right? And I can tell you, it gave me more stress than business performance very often, right? Sport is quite different. Sport is, people watch it for fun, but
Yeah.
it is so much more stressful than business.
Oh, really? But I read somewhere that you have a lot of lessons that you have learned from cricket itself. Can you share a few of them that you have you personally used it in your career?
Well, yes, I'll do few. So one of the first lessons I learned when I got involved with the cricket team is not to tell them how to play cricket better, because I have no credibility to tell Virat Kohli how to bat better than he's already batting. Okay. But I'll tell you, the one thing some things you lose in business, it's possible to have average performance. Many people have these corporate scorecards.
Yeah.
And in corporate scorecards, there's red, amber, and green.
Uh-huh.
That amber is a hiding place.
Uh-huh.
In sport, there is no amber. You win or lose.
Win or lose. There's no middle.
You win or lose. And if you eliminate the amber in business, you will just see things the way they are rather than the way you like them to be. You can be more honest about what's working and what's not working. Okay. The second lesson I think I've learned is in cricket and in many team sports games, you can have a team full of stars, but what you need is a star team. And in business,
That's so
how
wonderfully
you
said.
get and in business, how you make the whole more than the sum of the parts. How you make the whole team coming together to make it bigger than any individual could be is what a sports team shows you. Because in a sports team, rarely can one person make you win. Rarely can one person make you lose. But you can never consistently win or consistently, lose or whatever, unless the team wins or the team fails. And, some individual will have an off day, somebody else steps in to make up. Now, if you transplant that in business too, people who can get average people to deliver above average performance, make ordinary people do extraordinary things, right? Make the team bigger than any individual. Those are the teams that win, and those are the businesses that win.
Wow.
And I think that transplants itself quite well from sport into business.
That's so nice. And when you said about, it's not about anything in between. You're either winning or you're either losing. And I think that's one of the things which I consistently believe that there's no middle path. That, hey, you know what? Middle path I feel is like an average. So you're either losing or you're winning. You really can be average and keep going ahead in the game. So I think that's so wonderfully put, Anand. What would be your advice to the people who want to succeed in their career life?
So first and foremost, don't be over ambitious to start with, right? And that might seem counterintuitive. Go step by step. And whatever you are doing, right, first make sure that you're doing things that you love doing. and not hate doing. But once you're doing that, try and excel in everything that you do. That takes you to the next step. I tell people, when I used to cycle 13 kilometers a day each way in the hot Lucknow summer, going to school, so 26 kilometers a day in class 9, 10, 11, I used to dream about what I wanted to be. I never dreamt I would be here where I am today. Okay. I surpassed whatever wildest dreams I had for myself 10, 15 years
ago. Wow. Okay.
Okay. Now, it's not that I'm not ambitious for the business now. I am. I'm not so ambitious for myself. But I want to help people make the best, be the best that they can be, and get the business to the best place it can be. Whether I get promoted or rewarded, honestly, at this stage of my career is not important at all for me. So I have tried to do, first of all, take the opportunity to do different things and do jobs outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Your learning is discontinuous. Focus on your current job rather than always thinking about your next job. If you focus on your next job, you'll trip on the current job. If you excel in your current job, you'll get the next job. Okay, that's how things are. And the last thing I'll say is this: this thing that I'm super smart, that I don't need to work hard, is not a philosophy I believe in at all.
Absolutely,
right? It is a combination of I would say reasonable intellect and a hunger and desire to make a difference, and that combination. Right. So I believe I'm a very average person intellectually who tries very hard. That has been my recipe for success.